where you're in from.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here on such short notice. This morning, Canadians across the country were shocked and saddened to learn that a fatal plane crash outside of Tehran had claimed 176 innocent lives.
We do believe that it's likely that that plane was shot down by an Iranian missile.
American and Canadian intelligence agencies have declared with an utmost level of certainty that Iran downed Ukrainian International Airlines PS752. What makes this even stranger is that it happened hours after the Iranian missile attacks. The day of the crash, the Iranians refused to give up the black boxes, then later claiming the crash was by Iran missiles and American adventurism was responsible for raised hostilities. Just one day before the crash, a fiery tweet from Iran's supreme leader reminding Trump about Iranian Flight 655, where in 1988, the U.S. shot down the Iranian airliner full of 290 Iranian civilians. The Navy later claimed the plane was confused with a much smaller possible fighter plane. Some in the international community saw the American shootdown of 1988 Flight 655 mishap as a gray area jab at Iran, where the military could claim a mistake to cover up the murders while sending a delayed message that the U.S. did not appreciate the overthrow of the U.S.-installed Shah of Iran to the now in power Ayatollah. 10 years before the downing of Flight 655, in 1979, the Iranian Revolution saw the overthrow of the U.S.-installed Shah of Iran, put in place to protect Western oil interests. Another pattern of gray area is in 2001, when American missionaries Jim and Veronica Bowers were flying a float plane in Peru. A CIA spy plane didn't even bother to identify the plane's tail number to verify if it might be suspected of drug trafficking. For 9 years after the incident, the CIA covered up the operation, and false info was continually being given to the then CIA director by agents involved in the shooting. Only finally in 2010 did the CIA admit its camouflage of the situation. When it comes to U.S. domestic airplane crashes, the gray area for cover-up gets even larger. In 1999, presidential son of John F. Kennedy, JFK Jr., was in a fatal plane crash that has cover-up written all over it. Not only did search and rescue not deploy after the plane stopped communicating with air traffic control, it didn't deploy the standard 20 to 30 minutes after a plane's flight plan estimates its arrival either. In fact, search and rescue didn't deploy until 15 hours after the plane had been missing. This is a former president's son. This should be a high priority. The then 1999 impeached President Clinton didn't get notified of the crash until the next morning. After the crash became the top live news story nationwide, the FAA was ejected from talking to the press after they reported the mishandling of the situation, only to be replaced by the Department of War, also known as the Pentagon. Now, why would the War Department have interest in controlling the narrative for the crash of a domestic light passenger plane? Three things that make this crash even stranger is that in the region where the plane was officially found, reports of search and rescue helicopters were reported by boats in the area just 2 hours after the crash, 13 hours before the official search and rescue was lazily deployed. When the plane was officially found, the batteries were missing from the plane's black box, so the flight recorder didn't have record of the last transmissions made by the pilot, JFK Jr. His fuel was also turned off, indicating that his plane malfunctioned. This showed that he was attempting to safely glide a few miles without engines to a hard landing. But flight data showed that he made a massive dive straight down into the ocean. Considering the wreckage and flight data, some leading intelligence analysts speculate the plane was shot down with an early version of the now declassified R-9X missile, which can slash or impale targets with retractable blades in place of explosions to minimize damage and not alert others nearby with a fireball or shockwave. The Ukrainian International Airlines is a modern-day reminder of how controlling the narrative and faking situational confusion can leave open a gray area for the long-standing intelligence practice of cover-ups without consequences.